Welcome, everyone. My name is Mark Johnson, one of the managing partners here at Recruiting Insight, along with my other managing partner, Ben Hess, who's here with me in Seattle today. Our desire is to bring guests that broaden our perspective, give insight, and so much more. And today will not disappoint with my good friend and special guest, Clayton Collins, CEO of Housing Wire. Clayton?
Mark, thank you so much for inviting me to join you today.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited. So, let's tell the audience and those that are going to get the recording a little bit about you, a little bit about Housing Wire and its related companies and your vision.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mark. So I'm the CEO of HW Media, which is a business that I formed in 2016 with the primary objective of starting a media and data company that covers and spans the entire housing industry, serving professionals from loan origination to real estate sales to capital markets and loan servicing and all the technology partners that help connect the ecosystem. Our first course of action in forming this business was to acquire Housing Wire. So HW Media, obviously inspired by the HW in Housing Wire. Housing Wire was initially founded in 2008. And the mission that the founders of Housing Wire had is very similar to the mission that I carry forward today, 15 years later, is that we believe in providing housing professionals with the full picture. And by paying close attention to only your little corner, your little silo of the housing ecosystem, there's a lot of information and knowledge that's missed that would make you a better business operator, a better advisor to home buyers and home sellers, and a better, well-rounded professional overall. So we believe in serving housing professionals with news, information, data, and research that helps better understand what's happening in home building, active inventory, loan origination, loan servicing, economic impacts and interest rates, and everything that really ultimately impacts the velocity and sales of home velocity for sales, as well as the mortgage environment, which has been relatively under pressure for the last 12 months, which I don't think that's a topic on our agenda today, but it is a front and center topic for many folks in the housing industry.
Yeah, a lot of pressure. Now, that's an exciting vision and an exciting value add to the industry. I'm going to do another poll as we get into the content here, but on the wall, before I do this poll, on the wall here, we have three words: hustle, grind, and execute. Any comments on any one of those verbs?
So one of my favorite pieces of advice from one of my investors out the gate was to have a bias to action. And I think for me, bias to action encapsulates aspects of hustle, grind, and execute. So as an entrepreneur and operator, I'm heavily focused on anything I can do to better serve our users and grow the business that I've given a really important part of my life to building and developing. And each step of that takes hustle, it takes grind, but most importantly, it requires execution. I did a podcast a few weeks ago with Byron Lazine, a friend who's over at Broke Agent Media. And one of the things that Byron and I talked about is the willingness to share information, the willingness to share tactics, the willingness to share strategies, the willingness to talk to your competitors. And one of the many things that we agreed on is that execution is something that can't be given enough credit to. And so many people have the same ideas. They understand the same strategies. They've been given the tactics, but it all comes down to execution. What are you willing to do with the knowledge that you have? What are you willing to do with the knowledge that your friends, peers, competitors share with you? That's execution. So I love that in your hustle, grind, execute mantra, Mark. That execute comes third, but it's certainly not third in order. It is it's the exclamation point. It is the most important part of business strategy.
Yeah, I love it. Well, while we were talking about that, we launched another poll where the market, hey, what do you think? Have we reached bottom? Have we hit bottom and not much upside? Hit bottom and increased sales coming soon, or something else in the chat bar? Hopefully you can see those results in the scan there. Some people think, the market and the real estate industry is on a cusp of change. Shelley lives in a vacation market, and they still have buyers who've been outbid this summer and still, hoping to find something with less competition as the seasonality comes in. So interesting perspective here, isn't it?
Yeah, Mark, how would you define bottom? Like, what do you, what are you considering market health? Are we talking about inventory? Are we talking about transaction volume? Are we talking about prices? Like,
Yeah,
how do you give some context to what this looks like?
yeah. In my mind, I should have clarified that. My context was total home sales. 4.2, 4.3 million
Yep.
nationally. It seems like we're kind of skirting around that. That was my thought.
Yeah. I
What
think that's
you have
I think
thought?
it's the right way to look at it through this lens and with
Yeah.
this audience.
Well, so HW Media, you have Altos, you have Real Trends, you have a number of, you have a chief economist on your staff, right?
Yeah,
Um,
Logan Motoshami, he's our lead analyst. He's not a he
Not a
doesn't have
chief
the
economist, no.
economist title, but he does something many economists cannot do, and that is to take a very strong view based on data and analytics and help forecast out the future of the market. And I think he's able to take some risk in his views of what's
Yeah,
happening in the market that others are a little more restricted from doing.
yeah. Steve Haley from Lion types in, "Hey, we're going to see false ups and false downs for a while. No
Yep.
true answer in his mind in the foreseeable future." So he sees a little more uncertainty.
I think uh, that's a perspective that like deserves a little like discussion, because one of the things that we've talked about a lot in the last year are the false ups and downs that are driven by month over month and year over year data. And we came out of 2021, the first 2 quarters of 2022, with many all-time highs. And even without the fast correction that we saw driven by interest rates over the last year, it would have been a lot of potentially like false reads in the data because of how fast the market expanded in 2021. So we knew that there's going to be some false reads in the data, but that became even more prevalent when we saw interest rates shoot up and transaction volumes fall down. So now we're in this point where a lot of the historical seasonal impacts have been distorted a little bit, and the seasonality is being shifted by rate volume. We know that home buyers are sellers and home sellers are buyers and vice versa, and that rate sensitivity is real. It's really driving inventory. So I think that's spot on, that there's false ups and false downs, but it's really important to kind of look at some of the longer term trends that we're seeing. So we see some of the small signals in the Altos research data week in, week out. Last year we saw that let me get my exact numbers right here, but last year we saw inventory bottom out at 240,000 active listings nationwide, which is abysmally scary.
Right.
And this week we saw a peak for the year in 2023 at 509. Now, do we know what we're going to see in next week's data? If it drops to 508 from 509, is that worth a headline? Probably not, but it's one of those like small signals that it kind of matters. And you can read into like, hey, are we in an area where we're trending, where more inventory is coming available each week, or are we starting to correct downward on a seasonal trend? So I think the magic here is when you can start to decipher true market movement and seasonality.
Yeah. Well, speaking of false ups and downs, one of the stats that we've seen is the average agent income is down about 28%. And that's driving more non-payment of MLS dues. So the agent movement reports are suspect, because maybe an agent is out this month and then they're back in next month. And so some of these agent movement reports that we're looking at can look a little goofy. So really understanding the market and inside the data is important, isn't it?
Yeah, Mark, can you go a little bit deeper there and tell us like how agent movement is measured and how professionals in this audience may use that information?
Well, so in tools like Brokermetrics or Realytics or any of these tools, many of the tools provide agents out of a firm and into a firm,
Yep.
right? And switching or exiting the business. So if someone doesn't pay their MLS dues and they get cut from the roster, it's going to look like those agents have left the industry, when in fact they're going to repay their dues and come back next month. So Lisa comments in the chat bar that they're seeing many agents moving into the referral system, which is a great strategy for folks to keep them in your ecosystem and your culture. Put them into your referral network.
Do you think that movement to referral is a temporary stopping ground, or that's a career decision that won't be reversed?
Yes. I think both. Elisa agrees. She said it depends on what happens, with a lot of different things, right? And it depends
Yep.
on what happens in their career, and there's just a lot of factors. But it's a good way to keep them engaged and keep them, versus just letting them lapse and go off and into the sunset.
Yep.
Well, so Clayton, we're in a market like no other. We're operating in a supply constrained market, increasing mortgage rates. There's really a market like no other. And the implication to agent retention, talent attraction, has really never been more important. And our poll earlier showed that it was one of their, top priorities. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you've had to attract talent in up markets and down markets. As I think about just talent attraction and recruiting, just in business in general, what comes to mind to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking about real estate brokerage right now. And one of the things that became very clear to me at our Real Trends Gathering of Eagles event this summer, which you were at, Mark, and got to have the opportunity to have some backstage conversations with some brokerage leaders. And there's not I think, as we all know, there's not a one size fits all brokerage model. And so there's not a one size fits all recruiting and talent model. And what we heard backstage, like not on stage, not in the pages of Real Trends or Housing Wire, is that there's different incentive systems, and there's some brokerages who thrive by adding and retaining headcount despite productivity, and there's other brokerages who are highly focused on productivity per agent. And so as I think about the importance of retention, I think there's a few different lenses, and there's some self-reflection on, hey, what does my business model motivate? What does my business model encourage for both the agent, but also the broker? And so on the mortgage side of the house, where our Housing Wire audience concentrates a lot of their attention, is high focus on increasing productivity per originator. So recruiting is all about efficiency and driving additional volume, where I understand in real estate, sometimes there's different motivating factors. You want to kind of go a little deeper there with me, Mark, on how there's different like motivating factors on different brokerage models?
Yeah, because everyone has a different strategy. Some want the biggest army, some want the highest producing army, and
Yep.
they both have legitimate places in the marketplace. Scott types in quality versus quantity. Some want the quantity. There's some brokers who are focused strictly on new agents, others who only take experience. So just like your business and mine, we each have our own strategy and niche that we perform best in. So I think the key and what we train here at Recruiting Insight is getting really clear on your niche, getting really clear on your ideal agent, and what your value proposition is. Where we see people struggle is when they're not clear on those things and they're all over the place.
Absolutely. And yeah, knowing what game you're playing. So in my business, it's 100% quality. Like there's never an incentive for me to like bolster quantity of any job category inside of my business. It's about the, return for each given employee and the value they bring out of the business. So for me, when I think about like why retention is a front and center objective for our executive management team, is one, the compounding effects of knowledge. So we primarily employ writers, journalists, content creators, salespeople, and the compounding effect of the knowledge they gain about our product suite, but also our clients, really does change over time. There's a big difference between a first-year seller, a first-year writer, and a fifth-year seller, or 10-year seller, and a 10-year writer. So like there's a massive compounding effect. And that's great for the team member. They escalate in their career, they earn more money, they get more fulfillment from the role. But it's so much harder to replace that talent, especially when you operate in a business that's pretty nichey. Like I can't go out into the world and see a deep pool of B2B real estate writers or mortgage software, like advertising salespeople. Like it's a small ecosystem I play in. And while the pool of real estate professionals may feel deep if you operate in a niche where you serve a specific clientele and a specific zip code. That pool can be relatively shallow. So the compounding effects of retention is something that we talk about a lot in our business.
And so it really does speak to retention and your culture. And how do you focus on, like you said, that 5-year rider, has a whole depth of knowledge and experience that a first year doesn't. What kind of strategies do you do for retention in your business?
So relatively, like in the grand scheme of things, relatively young business. I've owned and operated this company for 7 years. So like at different points in the cycle, or different points in like ownership cycle, there's like 2 years might feel like a long time, but now it doesn't feel so much. So like I say my vision there has changed a little bit over time, Mark. But some of the things that we do like year in and year out, whether in our first year of ownership in 2016 or today, are we take a lot of time to understand our team members' objectives and career goals. So I love when we find somebody who wants to create content or wants to write about real estate for their full career. They can grow professionally and grow in compensation and grow in responsibility, but continue on that content creation path. That's a really good thing for our business. Other people express like, hey, I have a motivation of going into management. And that's a different path. There's a different training. There's a different skill set that we need to look for and help develop. So it's really important for me to understand the professional ambitions of the team member, but then also the personal ambitions of the team member. In the past and currently, we've taken tactics of understanding what personal objectives people have with earning, whether it is reaching a certain income level to put kids through college. We've had a team member in the past who aspired to learn how to fly, and that's not a cheap hobby. So there's some career milestones that need to be reached to pursue that hobby. So understanding the motivating factors for the team member and then helping them develop their skill set and career to hit those motivations has been part of our retention strategy, but also the strategy of just, doing what's right for people that we care about that are helping us build our business.
It's so applicable to the brokers and recruiters listening in. Many agents want and get a sense of satisfaction from growing into being a mentor or a coach or a branch manager. And getting close to your people is really what I think I heard you say, getting close to what their goals. I wrote earlier about 6 things that everyone listening in today could do. And one was re-recruiting your keepers. And that's kind of what you're talking about here. You're re-recruiting, your top talent.
Every day in a talent-centric business, which media and real estate could be qualified as, every day your employees choose to show up and work for you. Your agents choose to show up and work for you. And in some way, every day you choose to employ these people. And I don't want to create a, what have you done for me lately culture, but ultimately, like both sides, every day we show up and choose to continue working together. So that re-recruiting is an interesting concept, Mark. I haven't put it in that frame before, but you got to give your 5-year, 10-year, 15-year employees a reason to want to stay with you, and not just because that's what they did yesterday and they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, I love this term, re-recruit your keepers, because as we talk about recruiting, we always go to, the new talent. Well, what about the existing talent that's sitting down the hall, like you're talking about, that can walk out the door?
And that often becomes one of the most important entry points or influence points on new people joining the organization. So like we get great referrals for our team from some of our team members that have been with us for longer, and they serve as great role models and examples of what you can accomplish in your career at HW. So like Mark Johnson, I know you have met one of our team members, Mark Adams, who joined us as an account executive 6 years ago, grew up in our sales org. And when we acquired Real Trends about 3 years ago, Mark stepped in to lead that business. And since then has even taken on more responsibility. he's a great example of what somebody with focus and a goal can do inside of an organization like ours. So it's very important to me that we continue to give we re-recruit Mark back into the company and make sure that he continues on this path, because it adds so much value to us as an organization, and hopefully it adds as much value to him as a professional and what he's trying to build for himself.
Yeah, everyone listening in today, including myself, we can learn from recruiting our keepers. Ben types in, he loves the phrase, we're a talent-centric business. We're a talent-centric business. Barbara types in, retention is recruiting. She said it's like dating your spouse.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope. Incredibly important. I think I highly value my marriage too. My wife and I have a early date night plan. We have kids kids that are 2, 4, and 7. So it's not that easy to get a date night in, but we have childcare until 8 o'clock tonight. So I am going to use that.
Oh, I love it. So I wrote a couple of things in an article that's going to come out in here recently. We'll get it to everybody when it comes out. The 6 things that I was speaking that the audience listening in should do is, first, face reality of the current market. I don't think we need to go on that a whole lot. Number 2, Clayton, I hope you could comment on, is reset a clear vision for the future. Yeah. We know what the reality is, but how do we reset a clear vision for the future given today's reality?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of importance in market data with helping understand the current environment you operate in without it turning in to a gripe session, an excuse for underperformance, or a reason to feel pessimistic about the future. But I think watching market data is incredibly important so you don't end up and throw the baby out with the bathwater scenarios. So like, we've had several conversations over the last year, like, hey, this part of the business or this marketing effort is not performing as well as it should be. Should we throw that strategy out or change up leadership or hire new sales and marketing execution? Or is there a market dynamics that's driving this? And if so, how do we iterate to beat the market? So I think understanding the market's really important, because it helps you prevent making bad decisions by eliminating strategies that might be more market driven impact than like execution driven impact. Mark, I kind of deviated from your question there. You mind to take me back on track? What was the question?
Reset a clear vision for the future. Reset a clear vision for the future.
So that comes down to communication. That was another massive topic on stage at the Gathering of Eagles this summer. And I think as leaders, I have to remind myself of this as a CEO. Each of you have to remind yourselves this as recruiters or brokerage leaders, that saying something once is not enough. You have to say it and say it again and repeat it, especially when it comes to strategy and vision. We all have a strategy and vision in our heads. Like I know like our vision and mission clear as day, and we're actually making some changes there. So like we're going to reveal in the next few weeks at our Housing Wire annual event our new vision for the business, which is the full picture. And over the last 6 years, we've done 4 acquisitions and kind of had some distorted ways of, I think, the way the market and audience looks at us. So we're bringing the full picture to the stage at Housing Wire annual. But I'm gonna have to say that phrase like 1,000 times to get my team and clients and audience members to start thinking of Housing Wire as the full picture, instead of Housing Wire being the parent company of Real Trends, Altos, Reverse Mortgage Daily, and a subsidiary of HW Media. That sucks. No one wants to hear that story, but they do relate to the full picture of what Housing Wire is trying to bring to the housing industry with the support of some of the knowledge and network that we've brought into the organization through Real Trends. So I think the story just has to be repeated and repeated and repeated, especially as the market goes through change cycles. And part of that message isn't just like who you want to be as a recruiter or an operator. It's also the value you bring to your client. And that is something I think, we've all, can agree that the agent is in a big way the client of a broker. So like reiterating that value prop, reiterating the culture and value you bring to that professional, not just in terms of leads and technology, but also coaching and guidance and brand and like all the things that help make your agents more and more successful. I think it's just so important to bring back to every meeting and every conversation and every town hall, and make sure we reiterate the full picture.
And it's really important for this audience because unlike many of us, the agents are remote, right? Most
Yep.
of them aren't coming into the office, and communicating in a distributed workforce is much different than when you can put 1,000 people.
Yep.
Well, I would.
But Mark, I'm the same, but like it's like feel like I have so much in common with our audience today. I mean, because I'm doing the same thing, operating in a distributed company. You're operating in a distributed fashion. I know today you're up in Seattle, but you're not usually in Seattle. So
Yeah,
like we've all come to this place, whether we like it or not, that we don't have the opportunity to see our team members every day. In many scenarios, not even every single week. So what are the communication tactics that work in your culture to continually reemphasize that value you bring as an employer or partner?
yeah. So for me, if I could comment on it, to reset a clear vision for the future in this market, I believe the leaders listening in, it's vital to keep their ideal agents and hire those that fit their company culture. Someone earlier said quality versus quantity, right? Clayton, you reemphasize that.
Yep.
I think a clearly defined niche statement, a clear avatar of the ideal agent, a compelling value proposition goes so far in this market. Now, those that know our company a little bit know that Ben's a Navy guy and I'm an Army guy. So I like to quote Patton. And General Patton once said, a good plan that you act on today can be better than waiting on a perfect plan for tomorrow. Clayton, any comments on that?
I live by the phrase good and done is better than perfect and not. That is like so it's similar there.
Yeah,
But
very.
yeah.
Yeah. So if you're not clear on your ideal agent, clear on your niche, clear on your value prop, we can help with that. We talked about recruiting your keepers. What about Clayton? How important? One of the things I wrote about is showing a sense of urgency, showing some fire, showing some passion, showing a sense of urgency
Yeah.
in your business, so your agents and your associates see that you're in the game. How important is that?
Okay, so I think sense of urgency makes us all better leaders, but it also sets an example for what we need from our teams. So one of the things that I've been talking about more frequently is that I am going to achieve more I'm going to achieve 7 times more in my life than the average person and the average person that I compete against. The reason I am going to achieve 7 times more at 7 times the velocity, because Mark, every time you say, I'm going to get back to you next week, or I'm going to take care of this next week, I'm going to take care of it today or tomorrow. And that's the type of urgency that I want my team to operate with when we're talking about getting back to a client, scheduling a meeting, writing an article, whatever it is. Do it today, do it tomorrow. Don't push it to next week. And that is such a small iteration in the way that we manage our schedules and lives that can change outcomes and potentially accelerate outcomes by 7 times, because it brings so much more urgency to the scenario. And we know that in most client interactions, whether you're selling a house or selling a media product, when a buyer is engaged is when they're ready to get more information and move forward. Pushing back a week is not the way to close deals or win relationships. So that urgency thing is something I think about quite a bit and use that I'm going to be 7 times more productive analogy quite frequently, because I have to have this distributed team, and I get concerned about urgency and timeliness when I don't have the opportunity to see team members more than once a month or once a quarter in person.
Yeah. Ben and I frequently have a quote here, be tolerant of mistakes, with our recruiters and others, be tolerant of mistakes, yet intolerant of inaction and inertia. Inaction and inertia really kill businesses, right?
Mm-hmm. On the topic of recruiting on inertia, another kind of ethos I try to coach to is that the way it was done in the past works for the first 3 months you're in a role. But for someone who's joined our organization, after that 90-day mark, those decisions are yours. That technology stack is
Oh,
yours. That
yep.
process is yours. That team, that hire, that underperformer, that's yours. And I don't want to I'm not going to create a culture where someone can be with us for a year or 2 years and say like, well, that was the team, that was the hand I was dealt. That was the person who was on my team when I got here. That was the tech vendor that I was given. And I understand that some things take a while to change because of contracts or whatnot. But I do think that ownership and like that expectation of action is incredibly important in preventing inertia inside of an organization.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of a sense of urgency, let's face it, depending on what data you look at, there's still 17,500 homes that sell every single day.
Yep.
35,000 sides per day. Someone's going to get that business. And it's either, you or you and yours or someone else's. And so I think we need to fire up our folks with a sense of urgency to go out and get that business that is out there to be had, because someone's going to get it.
Oh, we're seeing it in the data on the real estate and loan origination side. So in the Real Trends data this year was one of our kind of fastest moving consolidation years, where we saw the Real Trends 1,000 do a higher percentage of total transactions than any time we've seen in history. So and we're seeing the same thing in loan originator data, where the top originators in the country are sucking up larger and larger percentages of market share. So like, someone's getting the business and it's your higher performing competitor. So that's now some of those individuals in loan origination and in real estate sales may still maybe still off year over year, but they're gaining a larger percentage of market share. They're gaining a larger percentage of relationships. They're building their database faster and their referral ecosystem faster. And we look at that as an opportunity to build a massive capability set that will pay off as the cycle proceeds. So definitely a flight to quality.
Well, so Barbara wrote earlier, retention is recruiting. We talked about re-recruiting your keepers. And then the fifth thing I wrote down here is a term called soft currency. With your existing staff, the psychological paychecks that have an intrinsic value more than hard currency, the thank you note. Like when I got back from Real Trends, I got a handwritten note from you, the CEO, that said, "Mark, thank you for being on this panel. You made a difference. Signed, Clayton." And it came with a, handwritten envelope and a stamp. I mean, that meant a lot to me. So soft currency, the handwritten note, the pat on the back, the thank you. How important is the soft currency in the retention effort?
I think you reiterated that point. I think it's incredibly important. It's something that I don't know if I'm like the expert to talk about that from start to finish. Even as you say that one effort that I took after Real Trends is probably something as a leader I should do more in my business and more with my team. I look for opportunities to, host breakfasts and take people out to dinner and send that note. One small tactic, it's small, but hopefully it's meaningful, that we've used is from time to time on a Friday afternoon. And now that I'm saying this, I'll do it today, is kind of go to our leadership team and say, hey, send me 5 or 6 names of people who went above and beyond this week, and send them a $50 Uber Eats gift card and said, hey, you've like grinded, like order takeout tonight on me. And like that's one of the soft currency things that we've done. And, it's not incredibly expensive, but hopefully it goes a long way. But Mark, even you asking me that question doesn't put me in a stance where I feel like coaching or saying I'm the expert there. It makes me want to do more. It makes me want to reminds me to go do more of that stuff.
Well, that's why we're all here, to say, I can be better at it too. I think we all can be better at that soft currency.
But also, so Mark, I'll like the full story on the gathering. Thank you cards. Like I told my assistant, Kristen, that we are sending handwritten cards to all of our speakers and as many of the attendees as we possibly can. She came to my house, parked me at my kitchen table, and like passed me cards, said, hey, like this is to Mark. And like I wrote it out, signed it. And like it took an accountability partner for me to ensure that I got that done. And like life gets busy, work travel's tough, managing a team is tough. We all have like the pressures of running a business or running our roles. But that took an accountability partner for me to execute at that level.
Well, thanks for being transparent on that, because that's a great tip for all of us. Everyone listening in here is a leader, and maybe you need to have someone in your organization hold you accountable to the soft currency. Say, hey, remind me to, and put it in the calendar, because it is so meaningful. And that could be the difference between a great retention number and an average retention number.
Yep.
And we know that's where you said it earlier, that's where all the referrals come from. Well, finally, my sixth point that I wrote about earlier was hard results, not intangibles. In a shifting market like this, Clayton, it seems to me it's easy to feel good about, I cleaned my desk. We organized things. We, restructured. And I'm not saying those things aren't important, but how do you focus on hard results versus like intangibles? What's the balance there?
I mean, a big part of it, which I hope translates to everybody on this call, is incentive structures. So like we build compensation plans that reward the activities that are most important in most scenarios. That's closing deals or hitting other key KPIs. But we also look for soft rewards to the activities that lead to financial return. So we do, I don't run a sales program where I'm monitoring call volume, but I am running a sales program where I see deals move through the pipe at a faster than average rate, and like giving like the intrinsic like reward on like why that was important, or the customer service review that we get from our account management team. So I look for kind of the soft feedback loops. Often those come from social media. Like we have people like give a shout out to one of our writers or salespeople on LinkedIn. I see those from time to time, and like we celebrate the heck out of that. So it's like celebrating some of those intrinsic things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to shift the conversation a little bit to relationships and recruiting. We're seeing across all of our client base in the US and Canada, we're seeing less effectiveness with cold calling, less effectiveness with email campaigns. Some of these traditional ways that people do, maybe that's a lack of trust. Maybe it's a lack of, we're so stunned with everyone coming after us. Maybe it's apathy. But what really stands out to me, Clayton, is relationships. And what we're seeing that is working for our clients, number one, is agent referrals. And that comes from all the stuff that we talked about. More critical now than ever is referrals from your recruiting your keepers who are good referrals. Outside influencer referrals, co-op agent sales, the people that you're doing business with, and networking. And I know you're a relationship guy, but could you comment on how important relationship is in building your business?
Yeah. So we are approaching 60 team members. So the need to run massive recruiting campaigns to find the next person and look at thousands of resumes is rarely the way that we add talent to our organization. Some of our most talented team members have come through other team member referrals, recruiting their past colleagues or contacts from school, or even past clients into our organization. So that's like a relationship side, but it comes back to the first thing we talked about was retention, making sure that the people that are already in your organization feel valued and would promote your organization as a place that they want their friends and colleagues to work for, not a place that like the team member who is already like, looking around and trying to figure out their next opportunity isn't the one who's referring talent into the company. So like retention is incredibly important. So it's not just external relationships with your existing team that drives new relationships for hiring and recruiting. The next step is industry partners. And like, so we've gotten referrals from our like vendor and like consulting partners on like, hey, I worked with so-and-so at another company that you should probably take a look. And the third, which has been really important for me in building our executive team, has been industry events. And so Diego Sanchez, our COO, we've worked together for over 5 years now. Diego and I met at a conference 6 or 7 years ago when he was working for another organization, and ultimately was able to recruit him in to join us. So like there's we didn't have cocktails that first night and say like, hey, you should join me, but it was like peer to peer. We were peers at this conference. We were talking, and like a confluence of events led to HW being a great place for him to join and at the right time. So like, I think relationships can take several different complexions. So like that employee relationship that leads to referral, that client and partner relationship that leads to referral. And then as executives and recruiters, the people we have the opportunity to meet at industry events or through trade organizations that ultimately can become critical to your organization.
Yeah, for sure. And for those listening in, it really, I would term it for myself when I was operating a brokerage, agent referrals, uh, influencer referrals that, my partners, co-op agent and agent sales, and then networking events and conferences like you mentioned.
Mark, can you, for this context, can you define influencer referrals? Who are the influencers?
So the influencer, like my mortgage partner, my
Okay,
title partner, my
perfect.
home warranty. Now they can't recruit from, because they're doing business with other brokers. But guess what? Who has the ear on the ground? Who's the first one to hear, oh, Clayton's not happy.
Yeah.
Or hey, Mary's looking for a new home, right? They certainly can be both Ben and I are military guys. So the military intelligence, right? Where you're gathering the intelligence behind the scenes with your eyes and ears on the ground for you. So all of those people that you both have a vested interest. They want to see you grow, and the more you grow, the more they grow. All those
Yeah.
influences are super important to develop.
Mark, tying that influencer referral back to retention, what do you hear the gripes are that like an agent may share with their mortgage partner that would trigger that referral? Like what are agents saying that's making them lift their head and look for something new? So if we look at it through the lens of leaders who need to retain, what problems do we need to solve to ensure that our employees aren't out there talking to the influencers about how they find their next thing?
Predominantly, they feel like a number. I feel lost in it. I don't feel like I'm valued. Very rarely is it, a tool, a technology, in many cases, it can be a policy. They change their financial model, and
Yep.
I don't like the new financial model. But predominantly, it's they feel not part of something bigger than themselves. They don't feel valued. All the things that we talked about earlier. And that's hard to do. Like I had 2,400 agents just in the state of Texas. And it's hard to make all of them feel valued and connected. But there's a way to do it. And you can do it at scale, through social media, through, the handwritten notes like you're doing, and, all those kind of different things. But that's primarily what I hear is they've disconnected from the organization because they no longer feel that they either have a future, that maybe they want to be a mentor or a coach and they don't see a path for that. But yeah, they're disconnected.
That's great knowledge. Thank you for sharing.
Now, I guess as we wrap up here, we're really in a market like no other. In many cases, there's no roadmap, but we do know a proven play, and it's relationships, right? And so my challenge to the audience is what is unique and innovative that each of us could do to engage our target audience. Clayton, one of our clients is conducting a 5-day morning meeting every morning with top producers on how to earn listings in this market. Every morning, 8:00, for 5 days, they're getting on and they have different top agents going how they're getting listings in this market.
Yep.
Another one is doing a twice a month prospecting night and inviting outside agents and prospects to it. Another is organizing a charity event involving all the agents in the community and giving back to a local cause. So I guess my challenge to all of us is, what can we do to create more value? What can we do to invest in our people and our prospects? How can we quickly seize on these opportunities? Any comments on that kind of call to action?
No, I mean, I think it's a perfect call to action, and it's going to be a different activation in each market and in each team size and in each specialty. When you were mentioning that, it reminded me of a text I got this morning. It's actually from a a mortgage originator in South Florida who's planning a 5 things type cocktail hour tomorrow. And a new agent that I know in Palm Beach messaged me a screenshot of the invite. He said, "Know this guy?" It's like, "Yep, one of the top originators in the country. It's worth going to listen to him to learn." And so like those types of activations aren't just powerful for recruiting, but like you can kind of teach your agents something that they should be doing to build their own businesses, just like this gentleman on the mortgage side is doing.
Well, and Clayton,
By example.
yeah, it's so important for everyone listening in because we're now coming onto the time of year where your own agents for retention and the outside agents are saying, is my current brokerage meeting my needs? Do I need to start the new year as a new year, new me, and a new brokerage? And so we're entering into the zone that we need to be on our game. And relationships and some of these innovative things we can do is been a nice challenge to everyone listening in today. What's unique and innovative we can do to engage, our target audience over the next 90 days. Well, Clayton, this has been super, super helpful. I'd like to kind of give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about Housing Wire and the Housing Wire Annual. I'm going to do a quick poll. Now, I know Housing Wire and Real Trends, many of our audience may better relate to Real Trends, but who's subscribing to Housing Wire or Real? Now, Real Trends and Housing Wire is coming together more for publishing purposes, right? Or are they still?
Yeah, you're teasing out. I don't know if we've told anybody that yet, but yeah, Mark, you just blew my spot up. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't know.
So no, we're in the process of bringing Real Trends, like publishing content, and Reverse Mortgage Daily, which is another brand that we purchased about 2 years ago. All of the writers and content into Housing Wire in a way that helps serve our distinct audiences, serves you as brokers and real estate professionals, but through the Housing Wire brand. And we're also bringing together the 2 events. So this year we hosted 2 events, Real Trends Gathering of Eagles and Housing Wire Annual. Housing Wire Annual is coming up in about 3 weeks, October 10th through 12th in Austin. It is a housing finance focused event, but we have the content created to appeal to professionals across the housing ecosystem. And next year in 2024, we're bringing together the 2 events in April for an event that we're calling The Gathering. And it's going to be these pop-ups got me here, Mark. It's going to be a combination of content, tracks, and networking events for professionals across the housing industry, with a very distinct track for real estate brokerage leaders and a very distinct track for mortgage leaders, but the opportunity to come together for networking, partnerships, and a few big keynote speakers and cocktail and food events. So this aligns with the vision that I shared up front. We believe in bringing together the entire housing economy and believe that there's benefit in learning about what's happening in mortgage and economy. And we know that the mortgage audience is interested in what's happening in the real estate brokerage world. So we're bringing together the ecosystem in a way that allows for specialization, but also allows for more generalized knowledge about the impacts and technology and economic drivers that are driving the housing market forward. So the full picture.
Yeah, I love it. Well, in the chat bar, any questions for Clayton or myself as we start to wrap up? For our guests, or clients, put that in there. For our clients listening in, I want to say thank you. Many of you have been long-term clients and are great friends as well. We appreciate you. We may have some offerings that you're not aware of, and we'd love to have a consult on those. For our guests who are listening in. Our unique screening capability, which we'd love to share with you, is more likely to help you generate top producers and 50% less likely in a failed hire. And so if you're interested in talking about that, I'm going to put in the chat bar a consulting link where you can schedule a consult with Ben and I. So Clayton, really appreciate you. Any last words of wisdom for the group while we're waiting, if there's any questions?
Yeah, no questions. I encourage everyone to shoot me a note on LinkedIn or connect on LinkedIn. If you'd like to attend our Housing Wire annual event this year or the big gathering in 2024, I'm happy to send you a promo link so you can register and get involved. Either way, we're excited to be part of this community with you, Mark, and welcome all the Recruiting Insight folks into the Housing Wire community. We seek to serve the professionals from real estate to mortgage and everything in between. And Mark has been a great partner in that. Mark, I'll see you at Housing Wire Annual in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, we're going to see you. Really looking forward to it. And I want to thank everyone for spending your time. Give us a quick feedback in the chat bar. Did we add value today? Give us a scale of 1 to 10. 10, we added great value. 1, we could have done a little bit better. How did we do today? Clayton, let's see. We're going to get some real-time feedback here. Hopefully.
This is the test. Does Mark ever invite me back? Did we?
Stephen, what would have made it 10? Yeah.
Terry Flash is my favorite. I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, there we go. Well, that's our intent, to add each value each time. Upcoming next month, my special guest is going to be Dave Childers, the president of Keeping Current Matters. And we'll be talking about all the market stats from Keeping Current Matters. Clayton, we've had Mike on from Altos, and we've had Steve Murray on as well in the past. So all some great stuff there.
Awesome. I'm great friends with Dave as well. We just had the opportunity to spend some time together at Tom Ferry's event when Dave was in Dallas. So I'm sure he will bring value to it.
Yeah, so he'll be our guest next month. We'll get all those dates published. We'll be publishing the recording here. And for those who weren't able to attend, we'll be sending that recording as well. With that, that's a wrap for this Recruiting Insight Mastermind. Clayton, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mark.